watchingkindbeatsdrums.com. This is Billy Martin.
All right, yeah. So, you ready to start? You good to start, man?
Yep.
All right, sweet. Anybody that's ever seen or heard you or MMW in general know that you play way more than just drum set. You play a ton of percussion, and you actually for a couple of years were only playing percussion with like John Lurie and Chuck Mangione and guys like that. What inspired you to start taking up world percussion in the first place?
It really, Brazilian, the Brazilian music is what turned me on to, like when I discovered what samba really was and Brazilian percussion, it just blew my mind,
Yeah.
And when I first heard, I walked into a room. It was actually Drummers Collective in the early 80s, which was on 42nd Street. It was a small little place. And I went there to learn about samba. And when I showed up, I almost cried because it was so beautiful. It was such an incredible experience, and everybody was playing different instruments. They all had their given different parts. They were playing together. Collectively. They had all these parts, and it blew my mind that that's all I wanted to do. For the next 2 years, I studied with the teacher at the time, Manuel Monteiro. He's back in Brazil, but he was teaching the samba classes there, and I went to every one religiously. Became one of the best students, and I studied with him privately as well, and that really opened my eyes to the world of percussion, and also it was also a gateway to a lot of other percussion like Afro-Cuban and a lot of traditional African-rooted percussion. So it really opened up that whole world. And then I heard Nana Vasconcelos play, and I saw him play, and he was one of my heroes.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to do, and I just kind of put the drum set aside for almost 2 years.
And what do you consider rather to be the most difficult percussion instrument for you to pick up when you were trying to learn it? Did you find anyone to be particularly more challenging than the others?
It was probably like the Pandero.
Yeah.
And the Cuica.
Right on.
And a certain kind of wrist action you do with the tamborim, that kind of stuff.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So. Here's another question for you. Considering how busy you are, because you are extremely busy, how often do you actually get to practice on your own without being in a band situation?
Well, busy is relative. Yes, I am very busy, but I also try to, as I get older, I try to really preserve, or I should say, I don't know what the word is try to protect the space I need to be alone, to
Right.
not be working so much that I'm like, I don't have time to develop like an artist, needs to be alone sometimes. So I kind of protect that, but yeah, regardless, you're right. I'm very busy, and I have 2 children, and it's endless amount of responsibility. So the amount of time, it varies. It depends. Like if I'm on the road for say 2 weeks, I just got back from like a West Coast tour, and on the road I can't really practice. I'm playing. We do a sound check, and we do the gig.
Right.
And when I get home, I kind of need a break, and then after I get that break from playing and getting back in with my family, I start to get back into my studio. And so it's really like, I would say, it's a little bit here and there. It might be 10 minutes one day, it might be 3 hours another day. And that kind of practicing, though, I tie in, anything I'm working on, compositionally, if I'm working on music and I'm developing music, it's not just a technical practice. It's not like a physical technical practice. So, after a while, practicing becomes just developing as an artist. It's not just one thing.
Right.
But if you're saying just practicing physically on the drum set, actually it's very little these days.
Yeah.
I play it. I play all the time. And if I have an idea, I'll start recording something. And to me, that's practicing. And then sometimes I'll be working with my students, and before they show up, I'll open up my Riddim book and start just working on a pattern. And when I find something that I'm struggling with, I kind of try to focus on that.
Right on. Now, you just mentioned the Riddim book, actually, and I was going to ask you about that. You released both the Riddim instructional book, and you also just released the DVD, Life on Drums. Now, I've heard you actually refer to it as an anti-instructional DVD, and I like that. And I also, Riddim is a book that I swear by, and I think that not only drummer, but every musician should really take a look at that. And I think, though, that the interesting thing about both of the DVD and the book that you put out was that it's really unconventional. These days you have people putting out DVDs that are focusing on technique and chops and licks, and then we have books that are focusing on technique and chops and licks, and then your DVD comes out and it's much more of a unique and personal approach. Why don't you tell everybody kind of about the Life on Drums and the Riddim projects?
Sure. Yeah, well, as you know, you were my student for many years. The Riddim book was an early thing, when you were coming out here to Jersey. And that something was a long time coming. For about 10 years, I was collecting these patterns that I call claves. Traditionally, they're not all claves necessarily in the Afro-Cuban tradition. I kind of use that word a little loosely because there are a family of patterns, and I like to call them claves because I like the idea that they're key. They're key rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
and clave means key. So these, there's several chapters in the book that deal with certain families of claves, some in 6, some in 8, some in 4, and odd time claves, and they all sort of grow from a single pattern to adding combinations. And that book was sort of more of a musical approach to playing grooves and how you can sort of develop your independence. And a lot, it's all rooted in West and Central African culture, which has spread to all the African American cultures, Brazilian, Caribbean, in
Right.
the U.S., New Orleans, and all that. So that's a big story. But that book, it's actually been growing in popularity in the past couple of years. It's really picked up. I'm
That's
really
great.
happy about that.
That's great, man.
People are starting to realize the potential that it has for them to develop, and it's more on I think, I like students to take the book and find themselves in it and find their own way to work on the book. There's not one way. So that's pretty much the Riddim book in a nutshell, I hope. The Life on Drums DVD, yes, I call it an anti-instructional because I want to, because a lot of instructional music DVDs in general focus so much on the technique of, of learning how to, to be proficient and play, a lot of different combinations of notes,
Right.
It's less about finding your style. It's less about the musicality, I feel. There's great instructional videos out there, but I just feel like there's so many now that are a majority of them are technical. I mean, a lot, They're so technical that you start to lose the point of what being a musician is and what being an artist is. And I think that's really important. I think that's why we want to play music, is because we want to express ourselves. And, we love these other artists that have their own style. So for me, it's this Life on Drums was about sort of creating this antidote, you know?
Right.
It's like the antidote to all this technical, pyrotechnic kind of playing, where he's playing so many notes and it has no meaning. So I'm really into the idea of, you know, empowering everybody that wants to play, and hopefully they'll find, you know, through you know, my way of discovering how I can develop as an artist, you know,
Right.
that they can find that inspiration. And a lot of it is, you know, conversations with my first drum teacher, Alan Herman, who was a student of Joe Morello's, and gave me incredible opportunity as a kid, not only to develop my technique, the foundation really of, you know, my playing in the early years, but also empowered me to play in a Broadway show with him. That was a very hip show, Bob Fosse's show, and where, you know, there was like 2 percussionists and a drummer, and the dancers were incredible, and it was really a big deal for me. I was 17 years old, and he just let me take over the show for, you know, the last year as a sub. Anyway,
That's awesome.
you can cut this down, but Alan, I felt that Alan had to be in there because we had reconnected, and I felt like having one of your teachers with you, especially him being the very first, you know, we're talking about 37 years ago,
Right.
was really a cool idea to kind of bring my first teacher back and talk about what was I like as a student, what was he like, you know, and that relationship of a student teacher is so important.
Yeah.
I felt it was a good way to celebrate that, and also a good way to have candid conversations with him. You know, nothing was scripted. You know, I had my topics that I wanted to talk about, and he just kind of reacted to them.
Right.
So we go from different topics that I like to bring up in most of my lessons, and then we cut in between these conversations with a performance, and a lot of it is my playing, you know, solo drums.
Right.
And a lot of the solos are improvised, but they're all sort of relevant to what we're talking about. And then I have some other performances with, you know, a percussion ensemble, and Alan plays a solo, and he also plays a snare drum solo that was read from a book, Portraits in Rhythm. And all this stuff is just, you know, a way of sort of bringing people into my world that is unique, you know.
Right.
It's not generic, and it's my way of sort of like showing people what I do. Also, I really wanted to make a point of making it really fun to watch. So when you see these solo performances, the camera work and the lighting and the camera angles are really, it's fun. It's like watching a movie, you know. It's like watching a film.
Right.
And it's also like watching someone play sports. You know, like so much incredible amount of money and attention goes into watching these incredible athletes, you know. But there's not many for drummers or musicians, especially instructional DVDs. You know,
Right.
that kind of gets skipped. So I thought, let's really focus on the beauty of playing. You know, what it's like to see someone play and, you know, get into the dramatic aspect of that. You know, that's why we want to play.
Right.
You know, we see someone play a concert, we get blown away. So why not show it in the DVD? Why not show it in an educational sort of format?
Yeah. No, I think, like I said, I think it's an amazing approach, and it's something that's just not out there. I don't think enough people are doing it at all. So I absolutely commend you for taking a different approach than everybody else, and showing people that it's not just about, you know, technical facility, but it's also about being a musician, which is what it should be about first and foremost. You know.
Absolutely.
So like I said again, I think that's awesome, and I think that everybody, not just drummers, should check out that DVD as well, because it's, you know, I've been studying with you for a long time, and one thing that I've picked up on is that, you know, any instrumentalist can do better or get better by working on rhythm related things, even if they're not a drummer. You know, I mean, like you've done your stridulations, or for people that don't know, you have pieces that are basically based off of the idea of crickets and birds, and you actually do these like rhythmic patterns with John and Chris as well in your band, right?
Yeah, we do.
So,
Yeah.
you know, so I think that anyone who plays an instrument at all should at least check this stuff out and try to do these things, because it doesn't have to be for drummers only. So the next thing would be your first. Did you have a first drum hero? Like, was there any one particular drummer when you were growing up that really kind of blew your mind?
I think it was, the rock and roll stuff. I wasn't aware of the jazz drummers, but so it was like, it was probably John Bonham,
Right on.
and the drummers that played in the rock bands that I liked at the time, and I didn't know their names either. I mean, it could have been Clyde Stubblefield, but I just didn't know his name. It could have been Sly Stone playing drums on his records, or whoever played on those records.
Right.
But John Bonham obviously was a very famous drummer at the time when I was, in the 70s, when I was a teenager.
Right on.
And those records were around, and I also, my brothers had Zappa records around, so I listened to whoever the Zappa drummers were. I was into that.
Nice.
And then Stuart Copeland was probably, like, I was obsessed with him because of his whole way of playing was so different in the rock world, and I really liked that. I liked the way he, swung. I liked the way he his groove, the way it worked was very different. And also, it was also kind of like a world kind of drumming. He had more of a sense of a different aspect of his, his sort of influences came from a lot of different places, the Middle East and Jamaica, and
Yeah.
you hear it in his playing. But then it was really, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, I saw Buddy Rich play, and, he was a hero, and I bought all his records, whatever I could get, when I started getting into jazz, and then I really discovered, the masters before these other drummers, like Max Roach, and Elvin Jones, and, Roy Haynes, and so many,
Yeah, to say the least. So besides that, let me see. Hold on 1 second. All right. So you actually, yeah, wow, I totally forgot about this. You studied music theory and composition. You even did some conducting, right, at Juilliard, I think.
Well, I studied. I took a class at Juilliard. They have an extension division, which is sort of like outside of the normal full-time, program.
Right.
I studied with Vincent LaSelva, who was a conductor himself, who taught conducting. So I took that class. I had the opportunity even before that in high school to conduct the concert band the last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I wasn't a great student in high school, but when I discovered music, or it discovered me, it kind of straightened me out. And so by my last year of high school, the concert band, the music teacher, head of the music department, gave me the baton and let me conduct Leonard Bernstein's Candide, which is actually super odd time,
Right.
modern piece, and that was a thrill for me, and I was really deep into classical music at that time, as well as everything else, but classical music was growing. I wanted to do it. So he gave me that opportunity, and then after that, I went to Juilliard Manhattan School of Music, and I took all these courses that are not normal for for someone who just wants to play drums in a band, because I was interested in all these things. I wanted to be a composer, and I wasn't even near close to being a composer, but these things influenced me later. I feel like I'm coming into my own as a composer in the past 10 years now. So, but that stuff helped me. I studied with, I studied jazz harmony course with John Carigliano, who's like this famous, classical composer now, but in general, contemporary composer. That stuff went over my head, man. Oh, but I tried.
Yep. Well, that's all you could do, right?
Now I'm getting it.
So basically, learning these, just trying to step out of the boundaries and challenging yourself made you grow, even if you didn't understand it at the time. It helped you grow as a musician in general. So these, yes, so don't be afraid to try things out there, people. You know, even if it seems like it's kind of deep waters.
Exactly, exactly. If it's there and you're interested, go for it. If you need help, ask. But go for it. Go. The sky's the limit. Bob Moses used to tell me that when I was really young. He always used to say that to me. Sky's the limit, Bill. And I'd always, that pumped me up, and it's true. It's just like you never know, what you'll pick up, and so go for it. Go for all these things. Go with your heart. What your heart tells you. You want to do something, do it.
Absolutely.
Don't let anybody talk you out of it.
No, that's great advice right there. That's for sure. If you could play any other instrument, what would you choose, and why?
I would probably play. It would be, a combination. It would be piano or violin.
Right on.
And then there's woodwinds too. I love, the oboe and clarinet. Because I love, just the sound qualities of those instruments and the possibilities. I mean, obviously the piano is a percussive instrument, so that's something I've been playing more and more and more at home and composing with.
Oh,
so
awesome, man.
I'm falling in love with that all the time. I have a piano in my house now, that's there for my kids, but it's there for me.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful instrument. It's so fun. There's so many possibilities. It's like an orchestra at your fingertips, And
Right.
I'm sorry, but there's no computer that can can connect in a human way, in a performance way that a piano can. And so I think that a piano everybody should check out the piano.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually, if I could play any other instrument, I think hands down it would be piano or guitar, but I'd lean towards piano. The amount of voicings is just ridiculous that you could actually do.
Yeah, you can play so many notes at once. It's hard to do on a guitar, but a guitar is an incredible extension too, that has so much possibility. And then there's all the effects and kind of, distortion that's really, as Jimi Hendrix said, is like, orchestral sound. He was really into the symphonic qualities of the guitar, and he sure the hell brought that out.
Right on. So there is a drummer that a lot of people don't know about, and they definitely should. And you play with him quite a bit.
Andrew.
What's that?
Time beats. It's you.
Yeah! You hear that, folks? There's Calvin, man. Calvin Weston.
Oh, yeah.
He's a badass. A lot of guys don't know about him, but you actually have two albums with him, like percussion duet albums. And you guys used to play together actually in the Lounge Lizards, right? So.
That's where I met him, yeah.
Now, you guys have a ridiculous. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, say what you have to say, because I'm going to talk about it.
All right, yeah, I was going to say that when you guys have an unbelievable chemistry together. When you guys play, it's to me it's ridiculous how good it is, and how well you guys kind of feed off of each other. What is it that makes it? What is it about Calvin's playing that makes it so fun for you, and that you think helps you guys gel so well musically?
Well, Calvin's personality, and the chemistry we have, it's Calvin's personality, it's the way he plays, it's the way he improvises, he doesn't hold back.
Right.
At all.
Right.
And so, for me, the fact that he is just so pure, he's such a pure soul, that there's nothing, he's not hiding behind anything, he is such a true, sincere, honest spirit, and when he plays, it's just, you want to cry, man, it's so incredible. And, his background of playing with Ornette Coleman, I think, has a lot to do with, like, how he improvises, how he can, listen and have a conversation with you musically, it's like, and that's something that, the second we played together in the Lounge Lizards, it was like instant gel, like so, it was such a combination. And I've always been into percussion music and playing with other drummers and percussionists,
Right.
but there's nothing like this connection that I have with him, and I think it's because we have maybe a similar kind of love for certain kind of music and openness. I don't know, it's our personalities, and that chemistry is so strong, and I really, as a couple of years into playing with the Lounge Lizards, John Laurie's band, John Laurie also wanted to have, he started a trio called the John Laurie National Orchestra, and it was me and Calvin and him.
Huh.
And he played, John played saxophones, he played tenor and soprano, and Calvin played drums and I played percussion, and it was really great. We toured the world. I mean, and very unusual sort of music that John had us developing. We developed together, and he really just was working with our pure personalities of what we were into doing, and so we developed even more. And then out of that, I was like, we've got to do a duet record, and that kind of started my record label, like doing that record with Calvin,
Yeah.
and I love that guy.
Yeah, man. He's a monster. He's definitely. And you actually just mentioned your record label, Amulet Records. So for people actually out there that don't know about it, Billy has his own label dedicated to percussion and the avant-garde, and you should definitely go and check that out because you don't know what the hell you're missing. That's all I gotta say. Because that when I first heard the Percussion Duets album, that absolutely blew my mind. Like, it melted me down. I had a meltdown.
That's a classic. Yep, Percussion Duets is a classic for sure.
Yeah, that album is just unreal, man. Great playing. You recently formed a project called Wicked Knee, right? Which is drums and brass, right? So how did that come about, man? Because that's an interesting lineup, and I really, really like it. So
that's always been a dream of mine, to play with brass and drums. That's something that I always felt I wanted to do. And again, out of the Lounge Lizards, there was Stephen Bernstein on trumpet. We rehearsed for about a week before. This was like I got thrown into that band because there was another percussionist, a really interesting drummer, Pete Zeldman, who wasn't working out in that situation, and so I got asked at the last minute to take over.
right.
And so we were in rehearsals, in the East Village, the Context Studios, and I used to look at Stephen Bernstein across the room. He used to look at me, and we were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Now we're like the best of friends, and I love that guy, and he's such a great. Not only is he a great player, like his personality on the instrument, and a composer and an arranger, he's an incredible music director. So that was something that I had talked about Stephen from the early days. I'm like, Stephen, one of these days I want to put a band together, and I want you to help me, do this big band thing, brass thing. I'm not sure what it's going to be. So last year I had the opportunity for him, to work with me, and so for the Life on Drums, I had a couple of these Illy beats, the breakbeat things,
right,
that I had performed live on a couple of takes for the Life on Drums video, and I wanted to add brass to it, and so I had these, I had written sort of these horn parts, and Stephen, he got Curtis and Marcus, trombone and tuba, in addition to his trumpet, and they came over my place, and we just kind of really recorded quickly, just for about an hour. We worked on two pieces, and that was the Wicked Knee was born then, because I realized, wow, this is a band. This is just this is a perfect combination. I've got my bass, and we've got a very limited, really 3-note in general. We have only 3 notes.
right.
But when I heard what came out of that session, and one of those tracks is on Life on Drums, you can see us playing, I was very, very happy with the vibe. So I decided to call them up again and get in the studio in January, and we recorded a quick like 7 songs EP. Half of them are my tunes, and the other half is some other tunes like New Orleans kind of ragtime stuff.
Right.
The Ike Turner tune. So I'm really excited about Wicked Knee, and this has been a dream of mine. And it's time. It's time for me to kind of step out of MMW, as Chris is busy with his brother. The Wood Brothers are doing really well.
Right.
And John's doing a million other projects. He's doing the thing with Cindy Blackman and the Tony Williams project stuff. And so I've always been doing something too. We're always doing something outside of Medeski Martin Wood, but I see, that we're going to have more time to do other things.
Right.
So this is kind of the perfect timing for me. And also, it's another antidote. I'm always reacting to, trying to balance out my life, And Wicked Knee requires no electricity.
Yeah, that's what's up.
You just show up and you play. I don't need a lot of drums or percussion. It's pretty much, if I had a snare and a bass drum, that would be my minimal requirement.
Right.
And, these guys can show up and play, and it's really, logistically really easy. And it's an instant band. These guys got incredible personalities, and their reputation is they've all played in such great bands, so it's really kind of perfect.
No, it's awesome. And like I said before, I think it's just it's an awesome mix that people don't get to see these days at all. There's no guitar, no bass guitar, no keyboards. It's just having all the melodies and harmonies there with brass and drums, which I think is just completely different. But if you listen to it, it doesn't sound like it's missing any of those instruments. You don't realize anything. You're sitting there grooving and being like, man, this is it. So I think that's I think it's really cool, man. That hopefully a lot of people that haven't checked out things like New Orleans music or big band kind of sound will kind of be able to pick up on that, which is cool.
Yeah, it's kind of an old school approach with instrumentation. It's very old. It's ancient, actually. But the thing is that it's very rare to hear anybody like this doing that. And I think what's important about that is that you can make music you can put a band together with any instrumentation. I think that you can be just as creative with the instrumentation in your band than you can with what music you're playing and how you're playing. So it's just another extension of who you are.
Right. You've done a lot of teaching. What would you think, or what do you consider to be the most difficult thing, or what have you found to be the most difficult thing to teach?
I think maybe the most is discipline.
Yeah.
Some people are inherently just really, really good. They have a good work ethic, and they focus and they get things done. But I don't know. That's one of the things. There's not one thing. There's
right.
never one thing. There are many things. One of them is the discipline of focusing and really working hard on it. Is like really taking it seriously.
Right.
Usually, most students that come with me are pretty serious about what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like I'm not just like your local drummer at the music shop. You have to call me. You got to get in touch with me.
Right.
And it's not cheap. And I demand a lot. And so I commend anybody who tries to get in touch with me and do it, because then they have to really deliver.
Right.
I don't let people slide. I get on people if they're not working on something. So that's one thing, and I think the other thing is to get them out of to get my students out of the head of just that drummers are there to just supply a beat.
Right.
And that's not the only role. The role, you're a musician, you're a composer, you're like, I think a lot of people just they just want to play a groove and that's it, but it's not that simple. You have
right.
to understand all the aspects of music, so that's why I get them into a little bit of the soloing.
Right.
And it's hard work,
Definitely.
but it's in the end, that's how you create your own style, and you become you know you become the great asset, that's your name becomes a brand, in a sense. If you
Right.
want to put commercial terms, you have your own brand.
Right.
I'm an original, and the only way to become an original is to kind of like understand that there's a lot more to drumming than just playing a beat.
Right. Hold on 1 second, Billy.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. I'm just gonna switch the battery really quick in my camera because it's dying off. Hold on.
Okay.
Be back in a second.
Your camera.
Yeah, my video camera, not my laptop camera.
Oh, so your video. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I have an external thing just like chilling in front of the computer. So hold on 1 second. Just make sure this shit works real quick. Damn, these things have like no life in them, man. The batteries. I just put a fully charged one in, so.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Let's see. Should be good for this one. Record. Okay. Come on, full battery power. Let's do this. Alright. Ah, that's weak. Low battery power. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit record and hope this thing doesn't die on me. Otherwise, I have another camera that will have a mic recording also, so just in case the video dies, the interview is still there, and I can end up just putting a picture up or something. So that's all good.
Yeah, you're just looking at me. It's just the same old,
Yeah.
face.
So let me hit record. But such a nice face, Billy. Come on now.
Yeah, well, all you need is a picture. You don't need a moving.
All right. So let me just make sure this is still going now. Yep. All right, we're good. So the next thing that I only have a couple more questions, man. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're, like I said, you're busy as hell. Having toured over the world, all over the world, have you noticed any differences in the roles that a drummer plays in different cultures?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've noticed that. Not just from touring, we listen to records. Listening to different music, different cultures. Have different roles. Yeah, drummers have different roles, of course. I mean, obviously, you can listen to classical music and you can see how there are many parts that sort of are ornamental to a composition, and sometimes they're central, but a lot of percussion in classical music, symphonic music, is ornamental.
Right.
Sometimes it's central. Then you've got, your groove music, which we love so much, I know you and I share that, and that's like, the driving, often the central, thing, dance music, you
Right.
know. African, especially in West Africa and Central Africa, the drumming is the music. It's everything. And the drumming is not just a drum head. It's, you're playing, tuned instruments, which may be wood or metal.
Right.
And they have a tonality and melodies and extremely complex, sophisticated expression. Large ensembles down to a small ensemble,
Right.
down to a soloist. Then you have gamelan music, where everybody together acts as one organism. They're playing, maybe they have a couple of notes, but there might be 5, 10, 15 people playing like one,
Right.
and that's really interesting because that's like, everybody has to kind of follow the flow, and the tempos change, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of different roles, there's a lot of different roles. I mean, you can, sometimes it's just motivational. I mean, really I've learned a lot in the African cultures that, some of the drumming is just purely for motivation,
right,
to keep you working and to keep you inspired. Someone can be hired to play for you while you're working.
That's awesome.
You know, like whether you're out in the fields farming, or you're building, or you're at the market. You know, we have Muzak,
Right.
right? But when you go to the market in these African towns, and I've only read about this and been told about this, and seen some on film, but, you know, you go to a market, there's someone playing there, and they're there for you to entertain you and to keep you kind of just, you know. And we have Muzak, you know, Muzak to us most people is a bummer.
Right,
you know,
right, yeah.
Elevator music.
Elevator,
you know?
exactly.
But you know, it depends, you know. But anyway, and then there's communication, you know, to communicate ideas. Like you know, for us as singer-songwriters, usually communicate these kind of messages, of whether they be of love or sorrow or loss or inspiration or protest. They have that, you know, in a lot of cultures, where the drummer, the percussionist, has that role.
Right.
You know, where they're sort of the town crier, the griot, and they, you know, they play, and they have a message to deliver. And sometimes the drummer's job is to send a message from one village to another, miles away. You know,
right.
in the deep jungles of the Congo or something. There's no. Well, now there's more cell phones now and stuff, but the culture is still alive, and it's respected and preserved, you know, just like our indigenous cultures from different parts of the world. But they could send these really deeply sophisticated telegraph messages, you know, and
right.
not only in Africa, but also in Polynesia. They have these things where they tap out these rhythms and these multitonal sounds that literally are speaking, and they're saying, you know, come home, your child is sick, you know, you need to come home.
Wow, it's like musical Morse code.
Yeah, right, yeah, like telegraph. That's what they used to call it, telegraph, you know.
That's unreal, man.
And so, you know, that's just, you know. And, you know, music, I feel like in general, just drumming is music to me. So it's like music is, it's healing,
mm-hmm.
It's motivating, it's, you know, it has a message, and also it can be just an abstract expression that is left up to the listener, you know.
Right.
So it's all, you know, there's many aspects of music. The purpose of it, there's many purposes.
Yeah.
To make you dance, make you feel better, you know, to, you know, send a message to people.
So one thing I've noticed about sending a message, so to speak, and having your own voice of communication is an artist's sounds that he chooses, or that they choose. I feel like that's their way of communicating and, you know, having their own voicings and sounds. And what I've noticed about you is actually that you like nowadays a lot of people are playing you know, they want drum endorsements and stuff like that, and I noticed that you're playing a vintage kit, and a lot of people these days, like in a, you know, coming up and playing in like modern bands, they would be like, what the hell is this guy playing a vintage kit for? But to me, and to the people that listen usually to your playing, it sounds amazing, and it's just something unique that's different about what's out there right now. What is it that you look for in a drum sound or a cymbal sound when you're actually trying to pick out new drums? Because I find your sound to be incredibly unique.
You know, if I'm, you know, I'm always looking for something that in a drum sound, I'm looking for, you know, something that is has a wide range of expression. You know,
right.
That so when I hit it a certain way, it's going to sound different than when I hit it another way.
Right.
So I'm going to stay away from the drums that don't sound any different when I hit them differently. You know, that's
yeah.
I want something expressive. I want something expressive, and I want something, you know, tonally interesting. Also, I want the tone of the drum to sound interesting. It's really what we call the timbre of the instrument. How it vibrates is key. So it has to have a nice sound, a nice, you know, tone to it, so that when you do tune it, no matter what note you tune it in, it's going to sound good. It has a wider range of tuning. Drums have that sweet spot of, you find the note that usually there's a note that resounds better than others.
Right.
So, it's really about the tonal quality of it. Usually when I'm looking for, what I've learned is that the drums, the lighter they are in general, the better they sound, because the heaviness of drums doesn't really contribute or translate into a good vibrational tonality.
Right.
And so you need that. It's like a violin, when you play one string, the whole body vibrates. If the body was heavy, then you're only going to hear the string, and it's going to be very, you're not going to, but when you play that one note and the whole instrument vibrates, now you're talking about a full, rich, tonal quality, and that's what I look for in drums and cymbals. And vintage drums, to me, in general, were built that way in back in the 50s and 60s, and jazz kits had more of a melodic sort of thing. And the rock drummers were playing those kits, the Beatles and the Stones and all those guys playing that, and Clyde Stubblefield and Jabbo and James Brown and Sly Stone. All the kits had that kind of quality that I hear. So there's a lot of nuance and a lot of things you can get out of it when you hit it really softly or hit it in a different place. It's going to sound good in all those different ways.
Right.
Yeah. So I have my own Rogers, but I also have just been recently introduced to Gianni Craviotto, who's a great drum maker.
Oh yeah. He
made me a drum set, and I couldn't refuse. So I'm really promoting his drums because they're super subtle and sensitive. You can really get super expressive on them. And I think he's, one of the great drum makers, and he also has the same philosophy. What I'm looking for in drums is that sort of, they really vibrate and they speak and they have a lot of nuance.
Right on. How did you get that kit yet, by the way, or no?
Yeah, it's on the road. Most of the kit is on the road. I have a couple of extra toms here.
Right.
He kind of made me 5 different toms so that I could apply, because I have 2 Rogers kits, and
right.
all the toms on each set was different. So he gave me those choices,
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I have that. And he also made me a 10-inch snare, like when I had my Brady snare.
Right.
So I have my 10-inch Craviotto snare and my 14-inch. And it's on the road with Medeski Martin Wood exclusively, pretty much, on the truck, ready to go, so that when I'm touring, I can use it on the road and people can hear it. And if you come for a lesson, you'll be able to play a snare drum and a couple of toms here, mixed in with my Nyabinghi drum and all that.
Right on. I love that drum, by the way.
The Nyabinghi, yeah.
It's such an amazing bass drum. It's ridiculous, dude. It's like the best sounding bass drum I've ever heard.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so I just
it is. Every time I play it, board with. Yeah.
It just sounds so warm. It's like just.
Did I lose you?
No, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, you're coming in and out now. You're breaking out. Yeah.
Do you hear me better now?
I hear you. No, I don't hear you. I hear you.
All right.
Speak.
I'm speaking. Do you hear?
Yes.
Oh, all right. So.
I hear you.
Okay. What are some of your personal grooves or songs? Your personal favorite grooves or songs, I should say, to play when you're on the road with Medeski Martin and Wood?
Well, that's always changing. It's never the same. But some of the songs that I love, still, out of the classics, like the Lover.
Right.
I love playing that groove. That's kind of my groove that I love to play. I love playing this tune called Shack Man, which is just going to be released next week. Something we recorded in Hawaii that we never released, and it's a really nice ballad.
That's
I like
awesome.
playing that, and also from the Shack Man record, there's a tune called Strands of the Spirit Red Gator,
Yeah.
and that has a certain kind of groove and that I love, you know. And that was a completely improvised jam session that turned into this really great groove. I like the Dropper.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I also like this tune that we don't play much, that we played once because it was requested by our audience. We had this tour where our audience made our set for our 20th anniversary. So that was called "Shuck It Up." I think it was from Friday Afternoon in the Universe.
Yep.
And that's kind of like that's a great groove. It's kind of a New Orleans mix with the groove that's in another time signature.
Yeah. Yeah, no, man, that's one of my personal favorite records, actually, is Friday Afternoon in the Universe. Sick stuff going on there. So, alright, we nailed the favorite grooves and songs. So, yes, 2 questions left, and then I could let you breathe. Let's see how... What do you consider to be... I know that this is a very, very, very broad question, so I'll say, what do you consider to be one of your greatest musical accomplishments?
One of my greatest musical accomplishments.
Yeah, like what are you most proud? Like, what are one of the things that you're most proud of achieving? And it doesn't have to be with the band. It could be anything. It can be solo, in the group, whatever it may be.
God, there's all these milestones in our lives, that sort of like that kind of define a certain thing, and then you kind of evolve from those, and so they don't define everything. So greatest is kind of like a tough one. Greatest all, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I was. Yeah. I mean, it's almost impossible to
I think just think about me personally, and me as just my person. Then it would be a solo record. It would be something like Black Elk Speaks, or something like Starlings, which is on Sodic. Starlings is very different, and it's not about the drum set at all. So some people are going to go, what? But for me, as a composer, that record, Starlings, defined my personal compositional expression outside of the drums.
Right.
So, so that for me is probably a great achievement, because there's percussion compositions in there, like the stridulations.
Right.
On there, right? You're in there.
Yeah. No, that album is well, a lot of people don't know about that record, but I guarantee you they should go to Amulet Records and check that one out. That's for sure.
Yeah, or it's Zodic, actually. It's a Zorn's label.
That's right, it's on Zorn. Yeah. Can they get it on your site also, or do they have to go to...
they can get it. They can get it there, yep.
All right, awesome.
Black Elk Speaks is sort of like, actually some of the music was born out of Black Elk Speaks, so the purest form, Black Elk Speaks really explores the compositional aspects of the drum set and my percussion playing. Less on the groove aspect,
Right.
In order for me to get into grooving, I've got to get out of grooving.
Right.
So
right.
for me, it's like my world is a balance of loving to play grooves and loving to play compositional, abstract, painterly kind of expression. So
Right.
I think for me, it's both. I'm lucky, and I demand it, that you need to, in order to get into it, you got to get out of it.
Yeah, that's a quote. Right. you just coined a quote right there, man. That's definite. That's some awesome advice. I remember at Camp MMW, actually, you were stressing get off the groove a lot, and that's something that I think a lot of musicians don't even they never hear that. They've never heard that before.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially drummers that really just love funk and all that.
Right.
That I think it's important for them to know that if you want to be funky, you have to explore other means of expression other than playing a rhythm. But that's we have to be careful about that, because I think a lot of musicians need to be more rhythmic. Outside of the drums, the other musicians, like the horn players, the guitar players, they need to understand. They need to get into the groove more. But drummers often, it becomes a cliche that you just groove all the time and there's nothing else. But within the groove, there's a lot of expression. You could be playing a beat and also be playing something that is not about rhythm. It's about a certain melodic expression that makes the groove even hipper, because you're painting a picture while you groove.
Right.
And like, everybody loves to dance, but they need more than just rhythm. They need tonality and that feeling of harmony, and abstract sound. When you listen to a lot of hip hop music, for me growing up, the hip hop music, it developed into this thing where like so many sounds were thrown in that didn't even make sense.
Right.
Until you realize that the abstract qualities of it, with the groove, made it like extraordinary and really unique, and gave it a feeling that no one ever had before. And that's what's important about drumming, is that you got to be able to tie in all the aspects, not just the rhythm.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an awesome lesson for drummers to keep in mind. That's for sure. And like you said, also for other musicians to keep in mind, to focus on the groove and focus, so.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that drummers, you got to stop thinking like drummer all the time. You got to think about you're a person expressing yourself. You're an artist. You're a musician. You're a composer. The possibilities are limitless. The sky's the limit, as Bob Moses says. So it's not just when you're playing drums, don't always think about, it's I got to play like a drummer. No, you don't.
Right.
You've got to play.
Right, yeah.
Your instrument happens to be the drums, but just express yourself freely, and get into it. Get into all the sounds and all the possibilities,
Definitely. The last question, I think it's the last question. Yeah. Are there any drummers out there that you haven't had the opportunity to work with that you want to, or that you would want to reach out to, or anything like that?
Well, I had mentioned Nana Vasconcelos before.
Yeah.
And I would have to say it would be him. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Nana. I already had the opportunity to play with Airto,
right.
Who's another great Brazilian percussionist and drummer, who has played with Medeski, Martin Wood. I would also like to do more with Airto too, but with Nana, I feel like that would be a very, very special thing. So I'm waiting for that opportunity someday.
Right on. And one last thing, what would you like to say to all your fans and supporters out there that have been following you and just absolutely loving your playing?
Well, obviously thank them, and I would like to thank all my fans for loving my playing. And I hope that that opens the door for them to find their way of going beyond what I'm doing. That to me is the most important thing. Is that anybody who's inspired by what I'm doing, to take that and run with it and go surpass me, just go to the next level, take to the next level, because I'm getting older, and I want to inspire people, and I'll be creating to the day I die, but I also want the younger people, my fans who are inspired by what I'm doing, to take what I do and make it their own and go further with it.
Right.
Definitely.
I just feel like a lot of younger, or just not even younger, but just starting upcoming musicians and drummers should be aware of your playing and approach, because it's exactly like you were saying. It's not about playing drums. It's about playing music, and that's a big difference than from what I'm hearing with all the other drummers out there right now.
Well, thanks, Andrew. I'm glad you were my student. And
I'm glad too.
You've always been very enthusiastic, and that's awesome. Thanks for sharing me with your people.
Yeah, man.
Getting the word out on just being a creative drummer, and not being afraid to be different.
Right.
I was looking at my old yearbook from high school.
Right.
And, you know, I had this quote about playing to a different beat of a drummer. It was one of my quotes, you know.
Right.
Which was actually on a Buddy Rich record, but it's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, I think, you know. And I think that's the message is like, you know, to find your own way of playing and don't be afraid to be different.
Right.
You know.
That's crazy, man. That you were see, like, what impresses me is that you had that focus and that view on things even at that young of an age. You know.
Well, you know what? I mean, yeah, I had the discipline, and I felt something. But you know what? You know how I found it? I found it out of embarrassing myself by trying to be something else that I wasn't. And I was sensitive enough to pick up on that like I am different, and it's okay, you know. And I probably got those messages not only from within, but from, like, you know, whatever was around me. You know, there was messages of like, it's okay, you know, it's okay to be different, it's okay, you know, to be, you know, the freak, you know.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I'm all for the freak in the class and the person who no one understands. I'm behind them. I'm into the underdog, as well as everybody else who's doing well, you know. But I just feel like my heart always goes out to the person that has struggles through, you know, those times, especially, you know, in high school and all that, where it's so hard to prove yourself, to find yourself, and to stay away from, you know, all that ridicule that we get. Kids are harsh, man.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, it's really easy to get caught up in the negativity.
Yeah, so you know, we need to celebrate, you know, the fact that we are different and that individuality is a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
And now that we're artists and we're musicians, we have even more of an excuse to take it out there and go far as we can go, and, you know, be an example for everybody that it's okay. It's good to be different. It's like, you know, variety is good, you know. Diversity is really where it's at. We have to be careful because, you know, culturally that's not the norm.
Right. And I think you make a great point right there too. It's, you know, it's not the norm here, and, you know, we don't want that idea to completely fall off the face of the earth. I think that I think people really need to be aware of that and more conscious of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well, good luck editing this thing.
Oh, it'll be fun, man. There's not much editing needed, really. I mean, like, it's more of like candid conversations.
Right.
And
I don't think there's anything wrong with anything that we said. So
right. Yeah. I mean,
the more honest we are, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, I just want it to be as real as possible. I don't want shtick, and, you know, like, I just want real conversations with real drummers. That's what it's about.
That's awesome, Andrew. I'm proud of you, man. That's great.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You're watching KindBeatsDrums.com. This is Billy Martin.